Of course, everybody wants to save every life they can. But the question is, towards what end ultimately? Are there ways that we can thread the middle here to allow that there are going to be deaths, and they're going to be deaths no matter what? And if we can do things to keep people in the mode of wearing masks, of wearing gloves, of distancing where appropriate, we've got to let some of these folks get back to work, because if we don't, we're going to destroy the American way of life in these families, and it will be years and years before we can recover.
That was former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie telling you to suck it up and accept thousands of additional deaths because, well, something. His reasoning is pretty bad. Now, Republicans, of course, have been using the argument of massive poverty and economic harm related to the stay-at-home proposals, but what they don't tell you is that the reason for that is because the government, under their leadership, is actually refusing to help the American people. They have the capability of sending corporations trillions of dollars in federal taxpayer money, but they refuse to do it for you. And they have. Now, if they're able to do that, to give trillions of dollars to the corporations, well then, why is it that they're somehow powerless to send every American $1,000 a month until this crisis is over? The truth is that they're not powerless to do so. It's entirely within their power, Congress, to be able to send that money to pass a UBI proposal, except that they don't want to do that. The fact that they're refusing to do so, even after bailing out the corporations and the banks, should tell you a lot about Republican priorities. They're willing to sacrifice your life over for their ideology. The ideology, of course, that government is not supposed to help. Now, I understand that maybe in normal times, even though you might disagree with it, the government, of course, is resistant to passing a UBI. Again, I think that actually, in some cases, a UBI would be good. It would depend, of course, on how you do it. But if you do it and preserve other welfare programs, then I think that going into the future, especially considering automation and other factors, a UBI is sensible policy. However, in a crisis, it's not just sensible policy, it is the right policy. It is the perfect time for a policy such as this, when you want more people to stay home so that they do not spread the virus to their family, their friends, their communities. Giving them money to be able to stay home is the smart thing to do. Unfortunately, Republicans and establishment Democrats refuse to do so. These are not normal times. The virus is killing about 2,000 people a day in this country, and that number will inevitably go up. The latest forecast will put that number very soon to about 3,000 people a day. That is one 9/11 every 24 hours. The devastation is quite real already. It will only get worse as we relax the stay-at-home orders. People like Chris Christie, however, believe that the economic cost outweighs the human cost. But unlike human lives, one can bring an economy back. It's not so easy for the families of the dead. Now, Christie also made this argument. We sacrificed those lives. We sent our young men during World War II over to Europe, out of the Pacific, knowing that many of them would not come back home alive. And we decided to make that sacrifice because what we were standing up for was the American way of life. In the very same way now, we have to stand up for the American way of life. We have to stand up for the American way of life by sacrificing the weak, sick, and elderly. That is the message of people like Chris Christie. That is not what World War II was about. World War II was about defeating those who sacrificed the weak in their mad quest for genetic superiority. I'm not saying Chris Christie would have been on the other side for that fight, but you have to be careful about what you advocate for. And what Chris Christie is advocating for is quite dangerous. Getting people out there to work before the doctors and the professionals say that it is safe to do so. Christie, of course, is just one member of a growing list of conservatives who insist that widespread death from coronavirus is a justifiable price to pay for reviving the country's economy by sending regular people back to work for substandard wages. That's what they mean by the American way of life, sending poor people, poor Americans, back to work for employees who will employers who will underpay them, undervalue them, and overwork them. The newest Republican plan, of course, is to defend those corporations by limiting the liability of their workers who decide to who come back and end up getting sick. If passed, these companies will take little to no precautions to defend their workers, as they will, of course, be protected in the end from any sort of lawsuit. And their workers, thanks to the economic downturn and mass unemployment, will be plentiful. This is the real danger of the conservative movement. It's the real danger of people like Christie. The people who claim to represent the working class seem to be more than willing to sacrifice them for their stock portfolios. Not to say the Democratic Party is doing everything in their power to help, with the exception, of course, of a few. The Squad, Ilhan Omar especially, is putting forth policies like a sustained $2,000 a month universal basic income for up to a year after the crisis is over, combined with policies like rent freezes and mortgage freezes. You don't see the Democrats really offering a long-term solution. Make no mistake, this is a long-term problem. Coronavirus isn't going to magically go away. Cannot will the virus out of existence. Vaccine is at least a year away. So we have to deal with social distancing and other issues for a long time to come. As such, our workers need a strong base of support until it's safe to actually go back to work. More than ever, the working class needs an advocate, and the establishment on both sides needs a message. That message for me is a general strike. Shutting down what little is left of the economy as they try to open it up is the only way to really get their attention. It will be difficult to do, but it will be difficult not to do it. We cannot go back to normal. We cannot exist when it comes to, or society cannot exist the way that it used to be, not without the sacrifice of many human lives. And that is not a sacrifice I think a lot of people are willing to make, unless, of course, you're in the privileged class here in America, the business owner class, the wealth, the wealthy donor class, people at the top. Those are the ones who are trying to send us out to our deaths in order to help them make a buck. We have a choice to make. General strike versus thousands more deaths. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.